which is Deborah, how do you say your last name?
Curran.
Curran?
Yeah.
You're on the agenda. You're on the clock.
I'm just here very shortly, just to thank you all, actually. So this is just a thank you. Could I just pass it through? Yeah. I ran a field course at the Banfield Marine Sciences Center for the first time this past summer. And it wasn't on looking at ecology or on seascapes, but it was on environmental law and sustainability. And so the class was composed half of environmental studies students from Western Canada and half law students from Western Canada. And the nation provided an incredible welcome to all of those students and really kicked off the course in a way that was very important for the students to have a solid understanding of where we were, so whose territory we were on, and the processes that were going on here that were not visible to our eye, as all of us are trained in colonial law and settler law. So we started off with a trip down to Keehan with Stella Peters, and then we came here, and we had John and Crystal presented to us on the treaty and the background to the treaty and what it means for the nation. And then we had Sherry present on a modified version of Hawaiiat 101, so she was clear that it is being changed and developed, and so that was a first try. Then a few days later, we had Edward take us out to Dodger Cove and spent almost the entire day with the class out there talking about his family history and what that meant. And then Christine as well came, and she was able to talk to us a lot about the natural resources that you're working on. So what the commitment that I made when I decided to, or I was interested in doing this course, was that the projects, the final projects that the students do would be relevant for the nation. So if in any way us being here and studying in your territory could be of benefit to you, that was my commitment. So I worked with your staff, so with Rita and Crystal and Christine before the course to develop a series of questions for the students to look into as research. So that's what I've handed out to you there. So they, all of them, the 24 of them, wrote on these various things that are aspects of what you're working on. And I'm just going through them now. I can't say that I've reviewed all of them, but I'm hoping there are some aspects of them that will assist your staff in moving forward on your priorities. The other commitment that I have is that there is broadly in higher education now, there's a mandate for everyone to indigenize the curriculum. So whatever that means, I'm going to leave that aside. All I know is it places a burden on Indigenous communities. So not only are you doing all of your self-government and your sovereignty mandate, but at the same time now you have all these institutions that want to interact with you. So there is a direct financial cost to you. At the same time, you as a community value and take it as part of your mandate to educate others about what's happening here and the uniqueness of your territory and what you've done here in the treaty. So just an acknowledgement of that and to thank you very much. I'm providing to you, or I've decided to take all of the discretionary money from the course and to give it to the nation, just an acknowledgement of the amount of staff time that people spent with us and just the incredible welcome that the students had. So I can share with you more formally once I've received the evaluations, the comments from the students, but they were, from all over Western Canada. Most had never been to an ACLA before, and they were just, as you can imagine, blown away by what is happening and by being able to have the privilege of studying in this traditional territory. Yeah. So you'll receive these reports. Well, you guys won't, but your staff will receive these reports, and I'll continue to talk with staff about whether this is beneficial or not and whether we do it again. I'm hoping to do the course for 5 years. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any further questions.
Or receive comments. Because I want to make a comment first. Thank you for that report. One of my personal objectives is that I understand in my lifetime there was at one time most of our people lived at home. when we lived at home, we were part of the ecosystem. Being part of the ecosystem, we contribute what happened. We were in something. And I think that needs to be more broadly understood. And I'm glad you had to talk about the treaty, because that's what it's trying to reconcile. That first of all, it was mostly federal policy that ended up moving us from our land, right? And when we got removed from the land, that affected the ecosystem. People don't realize that. You know, like when we're talking about the effects of smallpox, you know, the effects of tuberculosis, the effects of relocating First Nations away from their land. And so that's kind of what I want to focus on. I want scientists to start understanding that that was a really significant impact and created a huge change on within the ecosystem. And I may be standing alone in this, you know, but I do know that at one time there was 10,000 Hawaiian people living here. And they were definitely part of the ecosystem. And, you know, and Chief Louis, in one of his accounts, talks about over 500 people living just here in Kachina Bay. And you look at, you know, what did that mean to the ecosystem? So that's the kind of where my interest is focusing. And the reason it focuses there is that we're going to reconcile the situation. What is the reconciliation vision here? I'm not saying that, you know, we'd like to be where we were, but I'd certainly like us to be close to where we're positive contributors to the ecosystem. And to do that, we have to be here. And I always use the example, if you look at, there's just say 10,000 Hawaiian people in this area, and most of them eat sea urchins. You're preserving the kelp bed, right? And just those things. And if our people ate seal meat, you're eating the prey that go after salmon. So it's in that context that I'm thinking. So that there's been an imbalance created here. So I'm kind of hoping science will buy into that. Slowly but surely they are starting to buy into that. But it is, to me, that is one of the biggest issues. If we're not eating seal meat again, then the seal population has an opportunity to grow. And pretty soon the predators, there's too many predators going after few little salmon. So that's where I'm saying that we're at the balance. And if we were continued and allowed to hunt sea otter, it wouldn't got overpopulated where they're affecting the different marine life because of what they eat. So that's where I'm pushing, and I'm hoping science grabs onto what I'm trying to say. And I don't even know if my colleagues have the same view, but that's just an old man's view, and maybe that's all it will be, an old man's view. Okay? Thank you.
We're doing the work in our territory, and that it is going to be beneficial for us. You know, this is we're trending and going and creating new paths in many areas as a small First Nation. And one of the biggest things for our hereditary leaders is creating balance and sustainability. So I'm happy to hear that the work that's being done is leaning on that kind of stuff, and it's going to be beneficial for us moving forward in the future in regards to the responsibility we have, speaking on behalf of the hereditary chiefs of the First Nation, that recognizing that we need to have sustainability, and recognizing that out here we're not the only ones that depend on that $5 bill that comes around this area. We all want a piece of that, but we need to find healthier extractions, and the work that's being done here will definitely help us get to a place on how we determine that, you know, and how we determine when we build relationships and who we build relationships with, and how we build those relationships, keeping in mind that we have core values that guide us and that's our tradition, and so we need to have balance. And you know, what we look at as what is our heritage as First Nations, and what is that we depend on economic development as well. And there needs to be a balance and sustainability on that, and recognizing that we're not the only ones in White territory extracting resources or making decisions around resources and the environment, and that recognizing that it's going to take relationships and positive relationships to get things done, and that we cannot do it alone. So I wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. John?
So I have a couple of things. First thing is just to reply to something Robert had said. It's not just one old man at that point. What you exactly said is something that we put in the project description for the LNG project this time last year, actually, and it's based on the wisdom that is collected from old men.
Okay.
So it's not.
You're not an old man, Sam.
Yeah, you're not standing alone. In fact, it's part of a pyramid of wisdom at that point. So there's that. The other thing is just a deeper appreciation for the work that you've come in here to do. I think we should stop thinking about the interactions between institutions like the MSc and the University of Victoria as fundamentally transactional, because the interaction over time between your students, your faculty, and our nation is going to have a positive impact on us as well. That the interaction that we have with one another, the things we talk about with each other, will put ideas in the heads of everyone involved, and it's like the impact of nudging in regards to like government behavior is if you get someone to think about how they compare to everyone else in regards to their recycling, they actually start recycling better, separating their trash better, and so on and so forth. It's the same kind of thing when you come in and start to ask us about, well, what are you doing in regards to long-term marine plan? And suddenly it starts to become more and more organized because we're thinking about it in ways that have not been introduced to us. How a law student or a law instructor, professor would think about it is going to be fundamentally different than how someone who's trained in resource management will. And that interaction is value. There's value there in that. So it does take some time to do it, but I think all the time we can take to interact with one another is working on living reconciliation. So that in and of itself is not an issue and should never be for anyone here. In fact, people I've spoken to here are interested in what UVic has to say, or with the opportunities afforded by UVic in regards to not only law but other things attached to it. So that's a benefit to us if we can get someone to become a lawyer and come here. We can pay them to be on staff rather than pay firm rates.
Or maybe even a bigger impact is a couple of students who take the course end up to be lawyers for the feds and the province, and then when you negotiate with them,
I didn't want to say
they're,
that, but yeah. Don't like to talk about fifth columns on camera, but you know, that's that's fine. But it's exactly. So it's appreciated your being here. We're happy to contribute whenever we can.
Thanks, John. Deborah, I just want to share with you, 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, down at the campground at Aboriginal Day, I shared a quote that came from Chief Louis. And in his, he said, our people would put their fish bones back into the river so that the young fish could feed. And when I first saw that for the, I didn't really pay any attention to it until I was reading an article, and that article was telling me what the little fish feed on, the microorganisms that are in the river, and that's what comes off. And I guess that's why our people used to put the fish bones back into the river. And that's where I started building on this. You know, like if there was 10,000 of us putting food back into the river, maybe that attributed to why there was lots of salmon around, because the young salmon now have a chance to grow and become and go to their next stage. Where right now, if we're not on the land, we're not putting back the food into the system that they need. That's where I got that from, and that's where I'm building on that. You know, Chief Louie in his wisdom didn't say that for no reason. He must have seen something in 1964 for him to say that, because that's when he said that. He used to talk about what they used to do, putting the fish bones back into the river. And I think that's something we should grasp onto. There's something about that statement, at least, that made me hang on to it. And then when you watch our Heart of the People video, Willie Sport has a lot of things in that video that are relevant to what we actually should be doing to achieve good fishery renewal. And so anyway, I just want to add those and close. I'm really glad that you've done this and really appreciate your contribution. And of course, our people obviously really, really appreciate what you've done. So thank you, and we look forward to, did you say 5 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We look forward to that. And whatever we can do to help, we'll be there. And if there's more we can do, we'll always be glad to apply any help that we can.
Okay. Thank you for your time today.